Part 1. The Weight of Silence. The rain on Cygnus Beta 7 wasn't like rain on Earth. It fell in thick, gelatinous droplets that slid down the viewport of my habitation dome like tears of molasses. I had been here for 12 years, long enough to stop noticing the way it clung to everything, long enough to forget what real water felt like on my skin. This was my life now. A solitary existence on the edge of colonized space, working as an independent geneticist specializing in xenobotany. The isolation was a choice, a punishment I had assigned myself. 20 years ago, I had been a different man. Dr. Aris Thorne, director of the Geneticist Colony Project on Kepler 186f. It was supposed to be humanity's greatest achievement, a self-sustaining city of 50,000 souls, humanity's farthest reach into the cosmos. But achievement has a way of breeding arrogance, and arrogance has a way of inviting disaster. The outbreak started in Sector 7. A routine genetic modification in the food crops went wrong, mutating a benign fungus into something that targeted human neural pathways. It spread through the air, through water, through touch. Within weeks, 10,000 were dead, and another 15,000 were afflicted with what we called the fading, a slow, degenerative condition that erased memories, then motor functions, then life itself. I was the one who signed off on the crop modification. I was the one who cut corners to meet the colony's production quotas. The burden of those deaths rests on my shoulders, and it always will. But amid the horror, there was one light. Her name was Maya. I found her in an abandoned transport vehicle on the outskirts of the quarantine zone. She was maybe 7 years old, small for her age, with dark hair plastered to her forehead and eyes that held a fear no child should ever know. Her parents were already gone, lost to the fading days earlier. She had been hiding, surviving on ration bars and recycled water, waiting for someone to come. I should have followed protocol. I should have called for a quarantine team, had her tested, processed, and placed in a government facility. But when those eyes looked up at me, when her small voice asked, "Are you here to save me?" something inside me broke. I saved her. Not as a doctor, not as a scientist, but as a father. For 3 years, she was my daughter in every way that mattered. I taught her about the stars, about the plants we were trying to salvage, about the music of old Earth. She taught me how to laugh again, how to hope, how to believe that maybe, just maybe, I deserved a second chance. But the past has a way of catching up. When the Galactic Health Authority finally traced the outbreak's origin back to my oversight, they didn't arrest me. They couldn't prove criminal negligence. But they could make my life impossible. They could threaten to take Maya away, to place her in the system, to erase the only good thing I had left. So, I made a choice. A terrible, necessary choice. I found a family, good people, wealthy colonists on the agricultural world of Viridia. They could give her stability, education, a future free from my shadow. I told Maya it was temporary, that I would come for her. We both knew it was a lie. The day she left, she didn't cry. She just looked at me with those eyes, now older and wiser, and said, "I'll find you again, Dad. Someday, when I'm strong enough, I'll find you." I watched her shuttle disappear into the orange sky of Kepler 186f, and I felt my heart tear in two. Then I ran. I changed my name, burned my credentials, and disappeared into the outer colonies. Cygnus Beta 7 was the end of the line, a backwater research station where no one asked questions, and the past was just a ghost you learned to live with. 17 years. That's how long I'd been hiding. That's how long since I'd held my daughter. The rain continued to fall outside my viewport, thick and endless, as it did every night. I poured myself a drink I didn't want and stared at my reflection in the glass, an old man now, white-haired and weary, haunted by the ghosts of 10,000 souls and one little girl I couldn't save. That's when the door chimed. Part 2. The Girl at the Threshold. Visitors on Cygnus Beta 7 were not a thing. The colony had a population of 300, mostly researchers and maintenance crews who kept to themselves. If someone needed me, they come first. That was the rule. That was the safety. The chime came again, insistent. I set down my glass and approached the door with the caution of a man who had spent 2 decades avoiding the past. The security panel showed a single figure standing in the rain, hood pulled up against the gelatinous droplets. The silhouette was slender, feminine, but the scanner couldn't get a clear read on the face. "Identify yourself," I said, my thumb hovering over the panic button. A pause. Then a voice, muffled by the hood and the rain, but carrying a timbre that made my heart stop. "Dad." "It's me." The door slid open before I could think, before I could process, before I could prepare myself for what stood on the other side. She lowered her hood. The last time I saw Maya, she was 10 years old, all gangly limbs and missing teeth and wild, untamable hair. The woman before me was not that. She was 27 now, a full adult, with the same dark hair and the same eyes, but those eyes were different. They held depths I couldn't fathom, shadows I couldn't read. She was beautiful, in the way that a perfectly forged blade is beautiful, precise, dangerous, and utterly without softness. She wore a traveler's coat, standard interstellar issue, but beneath it I caught glimpses of technology one didn't recognize. Military grade, perhaps, or something beyond civilian access entirely. Her hands, once so small in mine, were now scarred and capable, the hands of someone who had learned to fight. "Hello, Dad," she said. Her voice was calm, measured. There was no joy in it, no tears, no rush of emotion. Just assessment. "It's been a long time." I stood there, frozen in the doorway, the rain hissing behind her. 17 years of imagining this moment, of rehearsing what I would say, of dreaming about the chance to explain, and now that it was here, I had nothing. No words. No excuses. Just the overwhelming, crushing weight of her presence. "Maya," I finally whispered. The name felt foreign on my tongue, a relic from another life. How did you find me?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "You taught me to be resourceful, remember? It took years. Tracks to follow, records to dig up, favors to call in. But I never stopped looking." "I'm sorry," I said, the words tumbling out before I could stop them. "For sending you away. For disappearing. For every single day I wasn't there." "I'm so sorry, Maya." She stepped past me into the habitation dome, her eyes sweeping the space with a professional assessment that made me uneasy. She took in the cluttered desk, the half-empty bottles, the stacks of research notes, the solitary bed. She saw my life for what it was, a retreat from the world, a slow death by isolation. "I know you're sorry," she said quietly. "But sorry doesn't bring back the years, does it?" I closed the door, sealing us in together. The rain continued to fall outside, a muffled drumbeat against the dome. "Why are you here?" I asked. Not cruelly, but with genuine confusion. After 17 years, why now? Why this moment? She turned to face me, and for the first time, I saw something crack in that composed exterior. A flash of pain, quickly suppressed. "Because I need your help. And because despite everything, you're still my father." She reached into her coat and withdrew a data slate, handing it to me. The screen displayed a genetic sequence, complex, layered, unlike anything I'd seen in my decades of research. It pulsed with encoded information, loops within loops, a biological encryption that made my head spin. "What is this?" I asked. "That," she said, "is me. Or rather, what they made me into." "Who? Who made you?" She took a deep breath, and when she spoke again, her voice was hollow. "After you sent me away, the family on Viridia, they weren't who they claimed to be. They were recruiters for a private military corporation called Ethelgard. They specialized in enhancing orphans, taking children with no connections, no one to miss them, and turning them into weapons." The data slate slipped from my fingers, clattering to the floor. I felt the blood drain from my face.
No.
"No. Maya, please tell me. I was their greatest success." Her voice was flat now, reciting facts like a report. Genetic optimization, neural rewiring, combat conditioning. They stripped away everything that made me human and rebuilt me as a tool. For 15 years, I was a ghost, no identity, no past, no future. Just missions. Just targets. Just the cold satisfaction of a job well done. I sank into my chair, my legs unable to support me. The room spun. The ghost of the little girl I saved, the daughter I loved, had been turned into a killer. By my own hand. Because I sent her away. Because I was too weak to fight for her. Maya. God, Maya, I didn't know. I never would have. I know. She knelt beside me, her scarred hand covering my own. "That's the only reason I'm here, Dad. I traced my origins. I found out what you did, why you really sent me away. You were trying to protect me. You made a terrible choice, but it was born of love. That's more than most of the people in my life can say." A sob escaped my throat, years of guilt and grief pouring out in that single sound. She pulled me into an embrace, and for a moment, she was my little girl again, and I was her father, and the universe was simple. But the moment passed. When she pulled back, her eyes were hard once more. "I escaped 6 months ago, killed my handlers, burned the facility, ran as far and as fast as I could. But Ethelgard doesn't let assets go. They're hunting me, and they've activated something inside me, a failsafe, a kill switch buried in my genetic code. If I don't find a way to disable it, I have maybe 3 weeks before my own body turns on me." I looked at the data slate on the floor, at the impossibly complex genetic sequence, at the weaponized code woven into my daughter's DNA. The task before me was monumental, perhaps impossible. But for the first time in 17 years, I had a purpose. "I'll save you," I said, my voice stronger than I felt. "Whatever it takes. I will save you." She looked at me with those ancient, haunted eyes, and for just a moment, they softened. "I know, Dad. That's why I came home." Part 3. The Cost of Salvation. The days that followed blurred into a haze of research, experimentation, and desperate hope. My habitation dome became a makeshift laboratory, my decades of genetic knowledge the only weapon against the ticking clock inside my daughter. Maya was a marvel of bioengineering. Ethelgard hadn't just trained her, they had rebuilt her at the molecular level. Her neural pathways were optimized for combat, her reflexes enhanced beyond human limits, her pain receptors partially suppressed. But the failsafe was the true masterpiece, a cascade of genetic triggers designed to initiate systematic organ failure if she ever went rogue. Elegant, efficient, and utterly merciless. "I've seen the effects," she told me one night, as I worked late into the cycle. "They showed us videos during training. Assets who tried to run. Their bodies just shut down. Piece by piece. It takes about 6 hours, and you're conscious for all of it." I gripped my tools tighter, refusing to let her see the rage burning in my chest. "I won't let that happen to you." We talked during those long nights about her years in Ethelgard, the missions she'd run, the things she'd done. She didn't spare me the details, and I didn't ask her to. I had earned the weight of those truths by abandoning her to that fate. "I killed a diplomat once," she said quietly, staring at the rain outside. "On Centauri Prime. He was negotiating a peace treaty that would have destabilized a client state. They made it look like a heart attack. I was 20 meters away, in a crowd, and no one ever knew." Did you feel anything?" I asked. She was silent for a long moment. "No." That's the worst part. They trained the empathy out of me. I knew it was wrong intellectually, but I couldn't feel it. Not until after I escaped, when the conditioning started to fade. Now I feel everything. Every face. Every name. Every life I took. I crossed the room and sat beside her. Not touching, just present. "That's not who you are, Maya. That's what they made you. There's a difference." She turned to look at me, and for the first time since she'd arrived, I saw tears in her eyes. "Is there? The things I've done, they're part of me now. I can't undo them. I can't bring those people back." "No," I agreed. "You can't. But you can choose what comes next. You can be something more than what they made you. I believe that. I have to believe that." She leaned her head against my shoulder, and we sat like that for a long time, watching the alien rain fall, father and daughter against the universe. The ending. On the 19th day, I found it. Hidden in the cascading loops of the Failsafe code was a single point of vulnerability, a regulatory sequence that, if triggered correctly, could initiate a controlled rollback of the genetic modifications. It was risky. One wrong move, and the failsafe would activate early. But it was the only chance we had. "We do it tomorrow," I said, exhaustion making my voice rough. "I need to run the simulations one more time, double-check every variable." Maya nodded, her face unreadable. "And if it doesn't work? Then I'll be with you at the end. You won't be alone." She smiled then, a real smile, the first I'd seen since she arrived. "That's all I ever wanted, Dad. To not be alone." The procedure took 6 hours. I worked with the precision of a surgeon and the desperation of a father, guiding nanoprobes through her bloodstream, rewriting code at the cellular level. Maya lay unconscious on the table, her face peaceful in a way it never was when she was awake. I talked to her as I worked, telling her stories from our years together on Kepler 186F, reminding her of who she was before they took her. "Do you remember the time you tried to feed the local fauna? The little hexapods with the blue fur? You named every single one of them. There were 47, Maya. 47 names. You wrote them all down in a notebook you carried everywhere." The nanoprobes hummed, doing their work. "I remember teaching you to play the piano. We didn't have a real one, just an old synthesizer, but you didn't care. You learned every song I knew, then started writing your own. You had such talent, such light." The failsafe sequence began to unravel, the genetic triggers deactivating one by one. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. I'm sorry I let them take you. I'm sorry for every moment of pain you endured because I was too weak to fight. But I'm here now, Maya. I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere." The final sequence resolved. The failsafe went dark. I collapsed into a chair, my body shaking with exhaustion and relief. For a long moment, I just stared at her, at the steady rise and fall of her chest, at the peace on her face. I had done it. I had saved my daughter. When she woke, hours later, the first thing she did was look at me. The hardness was gone from her eyes, replaced by something softer, something that had been buried for 17 years. "It worked," she whispered. "It worked," I confirmed. She sat up slowly, testing her body, feeling the absence of the ticking clock that had driven her to my door. Then she looked at me, really looked at me, and for the first time since she was 10 years old, she smiled like my little girl. "I remember," she said. "The hexapods." Their names were Fluffy, Scout, Patches, Daisy, and I don't remember the rest. But I remember they were real. I remember being happy. I crossed to her and pulled her into my arms, holding her tight against my chest. They were real. You were real. You still are. We stayed like that for a long time, father and daughter, holding onto each other in the rain-soaked silence of an alien world. In the weeks that followed, we made plans. Ethelgard was still out there, still hunting, but without the failsafe to track, Maya had become a ghost. We would leave Cygnus Beta 7 together, find a new world, a new life. She wanted to help others like her, the children who had been taken, the weapons who had been made. She wanted to use her skills for something other than killing. And me, I wanted to be her father. Finally, fully, without reservation or guilt. The last night before we left, we stood at the viewport, watching the gelatinous rain fall one final time. Maya slipped her hand into mine, a gesture so natural, so familiar, it was as if the 17 years between us had never happened. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for saving me, for never giving up." I squeezed her hand, my heart full to bursting. "You came back. After everything, you came back to me. That's the greatest gift anyone has ever given me." She leaned her head against my shoulder, and together we watched the rain. "I love you, Dad," she whispered. "I love you too, Maya. Always have. Always will." And in that moment, standing on the edge of the universe with my daughter by my side, I understood something I had spent 20 years running from. Salvation isn't about escaping the past. It's about finding someone worth facing the future with. She returned after years. The daughter I saved was at my door. And this time, I wasn't letting her go.